We want your calls on this now. Should we boost maternity pay to encourage women into work? I'll remind you of the number there. It's 0207 862 2222. Schools across England are ramping up maternity pay and offering more flexible working in a bid to stem the exodus of young women from teaching. Head teachers and charities say more than 9,000 women between the ages of 30 and 39 left state education last year, with experts citing lagging excessive workloads and maternity pay as the key factors. Now, it's not exclusive to education, with research showing that a quarter of women across all sectors have been forced to quit work to accommodate childcare. So, do we actually need to take action in order to keep women in the workplace? 0207 862 2222 is the number for your thoughts and views on this one. Nina, what do you think when it comes to maternity pay? Kimmy Badenoch famously said it's gone far enough.
Oh gosh, horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And she backtracked on it, but you knew that's what she really meant. Of course, maternity pay should be boosted. It's always fallen to women. You know, women take the most of the load when it comes to having children, and will continue to do so until men step up a bit more. And there's always been this schism between a woman wanting to have a family and to have a career, and we sort of managed that kind of a balance with women more pressure over the last few decades. But now it seems to me that if you're a school teacher, there are so many more pressures on you, because parenting has actually not been what it should be. There are children coming to school who are not potty trained, who can't use cutlery, who are unable to converse, because there are certain parents who have failed their children in this aspect. So it's always the school teachers that have to take up the slack. So the pressures of that, combined with the fact that if you are pregnant, our level of maternity pay is really not what it should be. You compare the rest of the world, and childcare is horrendous. The cost of childcare, I don't know how anybody manages. I really don't.
Well, we do have a declining birth rate. And there are obviously reasons for that. So perhaps this would be a good way to encourage people to have more children and stay in work.
Is that the real problem? I mean, we're talking about teachers, aren't we? And teachers are very lucky to the extent that they have far, far more holiday than anybody else.
Don't start that. They need those holidays, and they work a lot of those holidays.
Wait a minute.
I've just heard the phone lines light up with a very angry teacher.
Well, I'm sure there are, but there are lots of people who work really, really hard. Look, the first point is, in an idealistic world, it may be a lovely thing to give everybody whatever they want, but how do we afford it as a society? It's unaffordable. Well, and, you know, when you have a small business, you know, I employ half my staff are women, OK? And if a woman gets pregnant, if one of my staff gets pregnant, as has happened in the past, I pay them the full whack for the whole 9 months. That's what I do.
But you're very rare, because that's not what the teachers are
getting. What do you
getting.
mean for the full 9 months? Because they're allowed to take a full year.
Yeah, OK, but after the birth, they tend to come back. After the
child is a year, they tend to come back.
Yeah, they normally have about 9 months or a year off. I mean, and they will say, I'm going to do some work from home. So they want to do some work. And what I would say is, how many self-employed women do you know who actually say, yeah, I'd like to take a year off? Because I know that certainly partners in the law practices that I've worked in the past, I mean, one in particular, she had a baby, she worked right to the birth, she then had the baby, brought it in literally 2 days later in a cot and carried on. I'm not suggesting that's the right approach. There should be a level of support. There is a massive level of support. A woman can have up to a year, as you rightly say, off, without that interfering adversely.
But not the financial backing that they get in other countries.
Well, yeah, but other countries don't give them the time, do they?
They do give them the time.
Well, there's let's clear this up. Let's look at how much statutory maternity pay currently is in the UK. So it's paid for up to 39 weeks. This is statutory
90%.
maternity pay, although you can take a full year off. So the first 6 weeks, you get 90% of your average weekly earnings. Then that falls to the lowest of either £184 per week or 90% of your average weekly earnings. And that's for 33 weeks. Now, how does the UK maternity pay compare to other countries? Well, when it comes to overall pay, the UK sits rather lower down, further towards the bottom of the pack, but it's near the top when we measure against the length of paid time women have the legal right to take off. Now, in France, Germany and Turkey, for example, the government pays women their full salary for between 14 and 24 weeks. In the US, it offers 0 federal statutory maternity pay, but some states, such as California, offer up to 8 weeks paid family leave, about 2/3 of their earning, just 2/3 of that. And family leave, I'm interested to know what that means, whether it's both the mother and the father taking that time off or whether they split that. So yes, we get quite a long time that we're allowed to take off, but financially we don't get the
isn't
money
one
in
of
our
the
back
problems,
pocket.
isn't a problem, if we give more money, are employers going to say, look, it's really expensive to employ women?
Well, this is
and aren't they then going to
argument.
say, look, I'm going to shift, which obviously is discriminatory, but you're forcing the hand because business ultimately needs to make money.
OK, well, on that note, let's now speak to Jolie Brearley from the charity Pregnant Then Screwed. Welcome, Jolie. Thank you very much for joining us. You would welcome a boost to maternity pay. Now, is that in order to get women into the workplace, or are there other reasons?
Well, there's a mix of reasons. We know that if you increase maternity pay, then you improve retention rates and productivity of staff. We also know that because maternity pay is paid at such a low rate, that 4 in 10 women are returning to work after just 12 weeks of maternity leave, which frankly isn't enough. And we also know that 3/4 of families are starting their new life in debt because maternity pay is so low, it's less than half of the national living wage, and nobody can live on that amount of money. So they end up using credit cards and getting themselves into debt in order to survive maternity leave. And that's obviously not a great way to start your life as a new family. So for many reasons, we think the maternity pay needs to increase.
What about Nick's argument here that says, you know, if you are a small employer, a small business, and you're already struggling, you might be less likely to employ a woman of childbearing years because you're thinking, oh, this could be a year's worth of me having to fork out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that happens. We know that happens. And we know that about 40% of employers say that they will not employ women of childbearing age because they are worried about the burden that will have on their business. Yet we know from employers who have managed maternity leave and managed women on maternity leave that actually they would then employ more women who were going to have children because they realised that actually it's not as hard as they thought it was in the first place. What we need to do really to redress the balance is increase paternity pay as well. We have the lowest rate of paternity pay in Europe. You get just 2 weeks at £182 a week, and 1 in 4 dads don't even take that because they can't afford to do so. Until we increase paternity leave, then of course the joy but also the burden of childcare will always fall to women, and that means that they will be judged in the interview room. So we need to level the playing field in terms of parental leave pay, but we also need to increase it so that parents can actually take that time out of work to care for their children.
Part of what the head teachers are doing here is also increasing flexible working. I'm wondering whether to negate Nick's worries that people will stop employing women of childbearing years, actually flexible working is a good compromise and maybe a better way of dealing with this issue, particularly a retention issue after your baby's been born.
Yeah, I mean, parental leave is not a silver bullet. There are lots of problems here. There is flexible working, and we at Pregnant Then Screwed, our phones ring off the hook from teachers because they simply cannot get flexible working. They often find that their head teachers are really reluctant to offer them job shares, or, you know, of course, you have to be at school between school hours in order to teach the children. And so there's very little flexibility. And when you have your own child, which the majority of teachers do, being able to manage your personal and professional obligations becomes really, really challenging. And that's why we see so many women giving up work as teachers and leaving the workforce. So flexible working is crucial and absolutely is possible. I think there's a lot of teachers that sort of computer says no, and they don't really think about some of the options that are available in schools, but also childcare, as you have spoken about. We have one of the most expensive childcare systems in the world, and it's really hard to get a childcare place. So until we're able to fix our childcare system so that teachers and other employees can get affordable, accessible, high quality childcare, then again, it will be women making these career sacrifices in order to care for their children and not have to spend the extortionate amounts of money that they need so that somebody can care for their child, so that they can work and contribute to the labour market.
Julie, sorry, I'm running to a break now, so I'm going to have to say goodbye to you. But Julie Braley, thank you very much for joining us for the first half of this conversation. We are going to continue after the break. Should we boost maternity pay to encourage women back into work? 0207 862 2222. We'll speak to you in just a moment. Schools across England are putting up maternity pay to encourage more younger women into the profession. Do you think this is the right idea? Now, we heard from Julie from Pregnant and Then Screwed just before the break. She was saying that maternity pay increases would be welcome and actually could increase retention after the baby is born, so encourage women back to work post-baby. What's your reaction to what she had to say?
I think Jolie spoke a lot of sense. She also talked about paternity pay. These are great ideas. The big problem is who's going to pay for it? Where's the money coming from?
Well, the taxpayer. I mean,
But when you say the taxpayer, we're trillions in reality, and there isn't the surplus there. We just haven't got it. And the other problem is this: it's great to encourage people back to work, but there are certain businesses who deal with clients, and it's very difficult when a client has a big problem and they've paid a lot of money for advice with a particular lawyer, for example, and then they're told, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm now disappearing, and we're going to get someone else to stand in for an uncertain period of time. We're not going to know how long that period of time is going to be." That there are sort of bespoke businesses that really suffer with women who take maternity leave. So there isn't one size fits all, but overriding all that is it's a question of economics. The money isn't there.
Let's talk about the economics, and actually not the amount of women that leave work or go part-time after their baby or after they've done their maternity pay is staggering and actually costs the economy, they estimate, £29 billion a year. Well, that would definitely fill the £22 billion Labour accuses of the Conservatives leaving behind. So actually, it would be economically smart for this to increase.
If that's the real reason why. Do women, when they have children, do a lot of women not actually think, actually, I just want to be at home with my kids now. I don't really want to go back to work.
I think for most people, it's a financial thing.
I think it's a financial thing. I mean, back in the day, you know, you got married, then you had children, and if you had a career, you just stopped having that career. You know, that's just not right. And the thing is, teachers are so important, and because they've the end of the line now, as I say, with bad parenting or you know, whatever happens, they are under such pressure, but they are so important because they are the future generations are in their hands. Education is the most important thing. It really is. So we need continuity and a way for people to be continuously in work if they want to be.
You brought up the bad parenting issue before the break, and I did think that was a really interesting thing to pick up on, only because I think there'll be a lot of people screaming at the TV, yes, we're not toilet training children before they go to school because we don't have the family life that we used to. We don't have one designated person at home making sure that these children are ready, school ready when it comes to being 4 or 5. So actually, maybe we don't need women or men back at work. Maybe we need somebody at home raising the family the way we did in the 70s.
Well, then why not the man?
Oh, that's why I said somebody, I mean, man or women. I don't know. That might be an argument.
And to answer your question, which was probably a rhetorical question, I suspect that the man probably earns, in the main, more money than the woman. That's a question of economics, and I know people won't necessarily like that, but I suspect that's the reality. If you speak to HMRC, they'll confirm that is so.
But that would be a historically that would make women at a disadvantage from the get-go because of historical inequalities.
Women are disadvantaged. Women are disadvantaged. You cannot get round the fact that there's women who...
I agree they are.
like you, are pregnant and bear the child for 9 months, and then presumably, however, supportive your other half is, the childcare will mostly fall into your hands in some way.
But presumably you'll make an agreement. The husband and wife or partner or whatever your status, you'll make an agreement. You go back to work, I'll go back to work. This is how we'll do it. You sort it out between the two.
And I think you can look into splitting your maternity leave or sharing it. But we're talking about increasing the amount of maternity pay you get. Do give us a call with your thoughts, 0207 862 2222. Danica from Glamorgan, what do you think about what some head teachers are doing? They're increasing maternity pay for teachers in order to encourage women into the industry.
Yeah, so I think all women would agree that increasing maternity pay would be such a privilege to have, because it is difficult when you are off, or whether you take 9 months or the full year. It's really difficult to, sustain the lifestyle that you were before, or even just making ends meet while you are off on those 9 months or a year. But I think the real difficulty with maintaining women going back to work is the childcare costs once you return back to work. So I'm a registered nurse for the NHS, and my childcare costs, thankfully, were quite minimal because I had grandparents to look after my daughter once I returned back to work. But I know some families aren't so lucky to have family around that can look after their children for them. And they're looking at £1,200 a month just for childcare, which doesn't make it sustainable or even cost effective for them to return back to work. It's just not feasible. So I think the childcare costs would make much more of a difference rather than the maternity pay.
Well, and Danica, actually, I'm also thinking for you as a nurse, you'll work shift work. Now, most nurseries that I have spoken to will only do a sort of 7 till 6 will be their longest spell, but they'll do kind of standard working hours. How do you operate as a nurse? What do you and your colleagues do when it comes to childcare in order to cover if you're working evening shifts or anything else?
So I know quite a few friends who might work nights, which means that their children have to stay out overnight at grandparents' house. I thankfully work 9 till 5, so mine's not too bad, but that does mean that I need childcare then for every day of the working week. So, it is difficult to get the right balance with that then. Because, like you said, there is no childcare option that is after hours, after 6 p.m.
There might be sort of childcare, but yeah, grandparents are, I think, the best option if you're looking financially. Danica, thank you very much for bringing childcare up. Obviously, an absolutely massive issue. But when we're looking at businesses, just trying to retain staff. So there's a huge amount of industries that are really struggling with staff. You've got the hospitality industry, you've got nurses, doctors, teachers, and maybe an increase in maternity would help fill those job vacancies. What do you think, Valerie? You're calling from Lancashire.
I think they'll be rubbing the hands, some of the girls, because I've got girls that live around near me that every 2 years make sure they get pregnant so they don't have to go back to work.
Do you think that they feel comfortable surviving on £180 a week or less?
They're on that, and they're on all the child's family, their allowance that they get as well. And they get a big allowance while they're pregnant to buy the stuff that they need. I can't believe it. In that, I mean, I've had 5 children, and I've worked. I was back at work when they were only 2 weeks old.
Wow, I mean, that is absolutely incredible, but not a rare story. I'm going to say unfortunately, because I don't know how. Did that feel very healthy to be back at work 2 weeks after giving birth?
Well, I'm nearly 79, so I were all right.
Okay, but I don't think it's something that every woman would be able to do. I mean, I had a caesarean, I'd barely healed in 2 weeks. In fact, I definitely hadn't healed in 2 weeks. But do you believe that, Nina? Do you think people are just off work on maternity, enjoying themselves?
There are people who will
abuse
the system in whatever aspect. So I'm sure there are people who do that. But basically, we should, if you want to get pregnant, move to Scandinavia. They have fabulous,
Well, don't say that. We've got declining birth rates in this
I know,
country.
well,
We need people to be having babies here.
Sweden, you get 390 days off at 80% pay. In Denmark, they cap the childcare at 30%. In Norway, it's capped at £20 a week.
Wow.
Yeah, but do you know what the tax
Okay.
systems are in those countries?
Fine.
Massive, massive.
But it's worth
We're
it. because
clearly
they're bringing
going to
it-
continue this conversation after the show. Valerie, thanks for your call. Huge thank you to Nick and Nina for being such a brilliant panel. Thank you.